Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Dealer Insights podcast, where we go under the hood, bumper to bumper, and just about everywhere in between, discussing topics important to dealers of all types and sizes. Your time is valuable, so thanks for riding along for this episode of Dealer Insights.
Welcome back to Dealer Insights with Vinny and Sean. Today we've got a great episode. Vinny had an idea that I think the visual for dealers is an easy one to grasp, and that is pressure testing or stress testing. The barometer for your dealership, if you will, can very much be your BDC. And Strolid very much has years of experience of being that very thing for their dealer clients. So I think it's an interesting concept, good idea. And we're going to look at a handful of different areas where this makes sense. First is lead volume. Like, what if you don't have enough leads, or your dealership feels like, well, we don't have enough leads? How would your BDC, how would a business like Strolid be able to help your dealership understand whether or not that mix is right? So I guess my first question on that would be, Vinny, how should a dealership go about knowing how many leads is enough leads?
Yeah, it's a really good question. My own business, we manage leads. Ironically, we probably do a better job with the dealers than we do with my own company, because we just created our own CRM, and everything starts with the idea of success. But what is success? Is it like perfection? I never look at anything from that perspective. Nothing is perfect, right? And so I can tell you, dealer CRMs are not perfect. And part of the reason is the challenge that they have hiring, training, and getting someone to use their CRM consistently. A lot of sales managers, GSMs, they want appointments, and they'll look at their CRM to see how many appointments they get. And I'll bet that a majority of them, if you ask them how many leads do you need to get the right amount of appointments, I don't always get an answer that makes a whole lot of sense. Like, for example, we'll get a dealer say, I want 10 appointments every day, yet they get 200, let's say 300 leads. That means I have to get 10 appointments out of those 300 leads every day at 100% appointment set rate. So I'm a data guy, as you know. But if you look at it, go to our website, we have a whole page on what is a lead. To me, a walk-in customer is a lead. Your customer base are potential leads. You got phone ups, you got chats that come in, texts that come in, you got lead form submissions. And most dealers get about 75% of their sales traffic come in through a lead form submission. Maybe some are 60, maybe some are 80, but somewhere around 70%. And so we've done a good job with our technology to manage that lead. So in a consistent manner. But does that mean that it's perfect? No, but it's consistent. So what is the importance of consistency? If you're going to look at data, you need to make sure that everybody on your team is managing in a consistent manner. Then you can see where the problems are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's why I consider the BDC to be a great barometer. So how many leads does a dealer need? You could go out and buy leads. You could work on your website, get more traffic to your website, build your website out so you get better conversion to a lead. Those are good leads. And we consider that to be really important when we look at leads for a dealer. And this is all explained on that page, what is a lead. However, I'll break it down really quick. If you get 1,000 total leads a month, what percentage of those are walk-in customers? Let's say it's 100. They didn't call, they didn't email in. And let's say you get another 100 phone ups. And then you get, 700, 800 lead form submissions. It's probably off. It's probably more like 150 and 700 or something to that effect. the lead quality of the 700 is really important to understand. So because I've looked at lead data for so many years, we like to see our dealers above 40% of their lead traffic coming from organic sources like their website, their chat, tools like trade tools and there's a lot of different tools you can put on your site to help you engage with more customers. Why is it important to get a lead from a customer? Well, obviously, we want to have a conversation with them, tell them all the great things about the dealership and why they'd want to come and buy a car from us. Otherwise, you just leave it to chance. So that breakdown is really important when you determine the quote unquote 10% lead to close magic. Everyone wants to get the 10% lead to close. Well, it's difficult to get there in a domestic store because most domestic stores send a lot of third-party lead traffic to their dealers, campaign leads, hand raisers, lease payoff leads, and all kinds of other things. So we do a great job here at Strolid of looking at all that ahead of time. As a matter of fact, we do a free assessment, no strings attached, to analyze that because we don't want to walk into a dealership where they have unrealistic expectations. We want to let them know what we can do and whether or not they're doing a good job or not.
Do you run up against, especially when you're approaching a new opportunities with dealers, do you talk to a lot of them who are thinking about, hey, our lead volume, do we have enough coming in? Is it the right mix?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about perfection, though, Sean. There's no silver bullet. Every dealership is different, They have different.
But they all kind of feel that way. I guess that's my question is like, they kind of feel that way, but they need to be reminded there isn't a silver bullet. There's not a magic recipe for this.
No.
You have to kind of, that's the point of barometer in each of these segments is the barometer is going to help you figure out what those specific ingredients are that work at your store, your brand, your location, all those factors, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so a dealer who says, well, should we just sign up with another lead provider? That's not always the answer. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Because I know a lot of them they tend to think we just need to go buy more leads. And I think I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, well, you guys might say that might be helpful, but it also could be helpful if you don't feel like your lead mix and volume is in line, that there are a couple of things to change. You mentioned, hey, what's happening at the website level? That's correct me if I'm wrong in this, but as I'm hearing that, I want to break that down because I think for people tuning in, you guys are making recommendations to help with lead volume, lead mix that come from years and years and years of experience with dealers.
And lots of data.
Doing that very thing. Fine tuning, put the barometer, the pressure test, stress testing, what's working so that, and that never stops, right? It's a constant. There's a constant pressure testing to basically get the best result, right? To squeeze all the stuff out that doesn't really matter. And I'm getting that right. You guys are watching all the right. Is that?
Yeah, I'm looking for. How do I say this? So, what frustrates me the most, Sean, in business in general, my own business even, is when I can't make sense of something. Like I can't understand it. So to me, the way you combat that is by putting a process in, holding people accountable to your expectations of that process, as long as the expectations are reasonable. Tony Robbins isn't going to get 50% appointment set rate on 100 leads. It's just not going to happen. Now, it would happen if they were all from your website, potentially, but you don't always have the right car. You don't always have the right inventory. You're not always. It's a competitive thing selling, right? You always want to be the best. You always want to get to that. And there's never there's no sailing on it, but there is kind of, And so what I get frustrated with is if I have a team of 5, 10, 15 salespeople and I have 4 veterans that are really good, and I got, let's say it's 15, right? And I got 6 average performers, and then I got 5 new people or 3 new people and 2 people that got to go, right? How do you get a consistent process? How do you get them to follow leads consistently?
Mm-hmm.
And sell cars and deliver cars and show, and prospect and call their customer base and, follow up on lease retentions and all that other stuff. So like way I looked at the BDC a long time ago is, a consistent process is going to tell you a lot about how your marketing is working. A consistent process on managing this is going to tell you, how your pricing is, how are you marketing, how are you merchandising. That's why, we decided on the topic of a barometer,
Well, that's a great point, because even under the not enough leads, dealership feels like we don't have enough leads. We need more leads. We need more leads. The barometer, if you will, the pressure testing constantly, that might just not be true. And the dealer may not know that because they've maybe not managed the business in this way before, right? There may be things they're not looking at where it's like, actually, you have more than enough leads and not enough in terms of the consistency around the process. Because it is true, and it's been this way for decades, really, since the dawn of leads, where it can be very easy for a dealership to fall into kind of a rut of your process is actually just chasing down the ones that, management thinks are the most lucrative, right? The cherry picking, if you will. And you might not know that, well, you have other sources that you don't think are performing well, or you need more volume, but you're just not actually, you said it a minute ago, the accountability isn't really even a factor with some of those sources. So you don't know. You guys know that when a dealer signs up and says, hey, we want to have you take care of all these things. I think that's a really important distinction. Yes.
Yeah, the challenge, Sean, is like, not if you don't have enough leads, we can tell you why. We can help you make the best decision for your marketing dollars. But sometimes there's a marketing person at the dealership or a marketing agency that gets threatened by, what we're telling them, right? Or maybe your appointment set rate's too low. We could be we could be the effectiveness. We could fix that part of the BDC, but it could be your pricing. It could be your inventory mix. It could be your marketing and more. And so I feel for BDC companies out there. I had one of the first companies we worked with to help us develop our platform. When I was explaining reporting, this guy is a PhD at MIT, and he's in think tanks and everything. His name was Andreas, great guy. He said to me, Vinny, when you explain your reporting, it almost sounds like you're trying to defend yourself. And he came up with the idea of narratives instead of, data type reporting, typical dashboard type reporting. And so the narrative would be your leads are down, and here's why. Or you're not getting enough leads from this source, or you're getting too many leads from that source. And not Vinny telling you, the data telling you, So that's what we've been working on also internally. The appointment set rate is low. And everyone wants to say, well, you're not getting enough appointments. Well, it could also be your pricing. It could also be your inventory. It could also be your marketing. It could also be the process, the sales process within the dealership. Your show rate's too low. Well, it could also be, it's not always the BDC's fault. Hear where I'm going with what Andrea said, like I'm trying to defend myself.
Yeah.
It could also be the handoff at the dealer, or the lack of preparation for the dealer, or whether or not they're confirming appointments at the dealership. And we want to be able to point that stuff out, and really good, smart business people in a lot of our dealers, and a lot of the dealers I worked with at Group 1, if they're really good at what they want to do, they want to know that information. They don't want to defend it or make excuses or blame, right? Yeah. And don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. No BDC out there is perfect, but no sales department's perfect. But we take pride in our ability to, really work closely with our dealers and be conscientious and listen and be okay with saying, you know what, you're right, and we'll fix that, if there's something wrong. We're all car people, so we have thick skins. But the close rate, for example, Sean, it could be a marketing problem, right? It could be a training problem in the dealership. Or a disconnect from the BDC. Maybe they're not reading the information that the BDC put into the CRM to help the salesperson close those deals.
Yeah, you're flying into some categories here I want to unpack a little bit with you, because you're right.
Sure.
These are all good. Like you mentioned something that I just maybe gave some thought to. When you guys are talking with dealers, even around the leads, and you've mentioned marketing a couple of times, you guys also help dealers recognize some things that sometimes cost them nothing, but actually the value of it is a great. And I'll give you a couple ideas. Around leads, you guys can tell a dealer, hey, there's a couple of things available that will just help you just juice up your website conversion a bit, right? A couple of additions. I know you guys will advocate to the dealers like, hey, you've got a trade-in tool or you don't have a trade-in tool. You need to do this because these are good leads when you utilize this the right way. Hey, here's a discount offer. Like you guys do actually make recommendations around marketing, website optimization that I don't think people always think of. Like, well, hey, would our BDC company be making those recommendations? So that's just kudos. Awesome. You started getting into appointment set rate, talking about pricing, talking about inventory. What are some ways pricing can be affect that appointment set rate, both positive and negative, where maybe a dealer's not thinking about, hey, pricing could very much be a big impact on why you're not setting a lot of appointments or why you are setting a lot of appointments.
Sure. Yeah. And by the way, we don't recommend tools unless our data says that the tool's working, right?
Yeah, which is huge.
Right. And so how do we know it's working? Well, if I'm running a single point store, I look at one dealership's worth of data. Strolid's looking at, 150 dealerships worth of data and, engagement rates, appointment set rates, show rates, and close rates. And so we can absolutely, I love the BDC and I love data for the simple fact that I'm not that smart and it makes me look much smarter than I actually am. So at the end of the day, I don't want to make decisions that are tough decisions. I feel for dealers that have to make pricing decisions for, say, Toyota and Honda right now because they got no inventory and they got to maximize their gross on the vehicles that they have. But with that said, it's still a market. So a BDC can't, as the old saying goes, you can't turn chicken shit into chicken salad. You know what I mean? And if your pricing's too high and your competitors aren't taking the same philosophical approach on pricing as you are, it's not going to help by telling your BDC, just get them in. It's not going to help you get more appointments to tell your BDC, well, you're weak. You can't get appointments. You can't get around that question. We've had arguments with some dealers where they're like, this guy wants to know, what we're going to pay him, or they want us to tell the customer that they're $3,000 or $4,000 over over MSRP when we shop for them, and they're, competition's doing things a little bit more creative, and so that hurts, right? That's going to hurt you, and frankly, you're playing with your customer base, and you're going to eventually erode your customer base, which is eventually going to affect your service department and your ability to make money in the service department and parts department, and reselling those people again is hard. I ran a dealership that was a new point, meaning it didn't exist. I started running it when it was 3 years old. I felt bad for the two general managers who ran it before me because they struggled. Why do you think they struggled? They didn't have a customer base. Their customer base was someone else's customer that they had to steal.
Conquesting.
Yeah. I mean, because right, you rely on your customer base for referrals and repeat business and all that kind of stuff. So the bigger your customer base, the better. Another thing is your inventory. I mentioned Toyota and Honda struggling with inventory. Well, inventory is what converts. Customers today do not need to go into a dealership and get sold on a vehicle that they don't want. They can continue to look. I was talking to Papa the other day, my dad, and one of the things he said was, I've gotten some questions from some of the directors about one of our teams. Their appointment set rate is low. He goes, but man, when I tell you, I go in and listen, they're doing a great job. And he's like, I'm like, so what's the problem? And he said, the problem is you're getting calls from all over the country on certain vehicles. These dealers won't sell out of their market, and no one's really looking hard at that data to understand that, okay, yeah, you're getting leads, but you're not getting appointments for more reasons than just a weak BDC. Why do you think I like organic leads so much, Sean? Because they convert high. It makes us look better.
Yeah.
They're local customers that are converting on your website that are asking questions, and we're answering them fast, and we're being responsive and professional and all those kinds of things. And we're just not we're getting the results on those, but we're not getting results for dealers that are struggling with new car inventory.
When you guys do your complimentary audit or assessment, I guess is what you guys call it.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, do you look? I'm guessing that the answer is going to be, well, if they'll provide access to this much visibility. But do you guys look at where the dealer's at on appointment set rates,
Yeah.
show rates, and close rates, and give them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When we look at follow up on leads,
mm-hmm.
we look at their cadence, we look at their workflow, we give them a whole rundown on what we think we can do to improve. I think I told you this before, but I have a dealer that wants to do business with me because he's a friend of mine. And I looked at his stuff and I told him, the last thing I want to do is come in and mess up what you got going because it's working.
Yeah.
Is it perfect? Yeah. No. But if I come in and give you similar results or maybe a little bit better results, but they're doing a good job, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not saying we only work in dealers that are doing poorly, because that's not true either. I mean, we're there.
You shared that with me, but and you've shared it in the context too of well, listen, if the dealership thinks hey, we want to use you guys, and you're thinking traditionally we'd use you for inbound calls and leads from all sources, and we'll kind of help you on the sales side, that you've identified when dealers are you don't probably want to disrupt what's going on. It's good. Your assessment can tell you that. But then you might say to the dealer, what we really could help you with is your service BDC. You need help there.
Mm-hmm. Or outbound.
Or maybe outbound, right? Yeah, because you guys cover all of that, which I think, to me, we'll talk about it too. We got to figure out how to promote even more heavily a complimentary assessment like that. Because usually dealers think there's a string attached. Like, what's the string? What's the catch? There's no catch. It literally is the process that you guys utilize to help identify where you can best help a dealer, where you may not. And like you just said, if it's not, hey, you don't need us, then we also tell you you're doing good, and we'll reinforce, here's the stuff you should keep doing that way. And if that falls apart, then you can call us back. That's
right.
That's extremely valuable, because a dealer can actually trust that you're just going to tell them the truth. Yeah, we can help you, and here's all the reasons why, or you're doing really good, so keep doing these things. And
first of all, funny little side note, we couldn't possibly do this for 18,000 dealers, nor do we want to. So not everybody needs our services, but I spoke to a guy yesterday at a Honda dealer in Chicago. Great guy. I felt like I was talking to myself. That's the kind of guy I want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because he knows the struggles of what it's, how to keep a BDC intact, to keep them trained, to keep them motivated, to keep quality people in the mix, and the turnover and yada, yada, yada. But he's a data guy. And really what he's saying to me is, all I want is a consistent approach to this, so I can run my business and not have to worry constantly about whether or not things are being done consistently. So accountability is a big deal for me. I grew up under one of our leaders who was a tremendous disciplinarian, but accountability was big. But he was a great guy too at the same time. But everything had to be done from a process standpoint. And I can tell you, everyone that came out of that group has been successful. So the recipe is what? Consistency. It's not perfection, it's consistency. It's trying to be as consistent as you possibly can and follow a process the best you can. Obviously, critical thinking, emotion, and your sales ability helps you get better results, and those people are special. I get it. But at the end of the day, everyone uses one tool on the sales side from an accountability standpoint, and that one tool is a CRM. And unfortunately, if you're not managing the functionality of the CRM properly, you're not going to see it clear enough to understand, and that's what we try to bring in. We say, we're going to use that CRM. We're going to manage it really well. Like, our people can train and manage and set up a CRM as well as the CRM companies at this point. And then once it's in use and it's flowing, now we can start looking at the data and start making really good decisions and put in some training where it's needed and understand where our process breakdowns are and all that kind of great stuff to help you make your business a better business, which is what I hope every owner and general manager wants. Unfortunately, a lot of CRMs are gamed to make their numbers look good. It's a joke.
Interesting little tidbit. I don't want to bury the lead on that. Another thing that you guys do, which to me is a massive value point, is your team has so much experience with all of the top CRMs that they could literally probably train it into the dealership better.
We do all the time with our own dealers.
And think about, and I know from my own experience, some of the companies I used to work for that had big CRM tools, the amount of training, extensive training, it's different when you're a trainer of that CRM from the CRM that doesn't actually, you still aren't a dealership employee working that tool on that side of the fence. That's a different experience, but you guys have exactly that experience. You're not the CRM company. You're literally a pressure tested, stress tested team that understands how those things work. And you're bringing that experience and that helpfulness to a dealership. That's, to me, one of those other kind of intrinsic, maybe deeper level value points of bringing in somebody like you guys that I don't think a lot of dealers consider. Especially think about the turnover wheel. You've got new people. We've talked about this before. Training, retraining, training, retraining, training, retraining, hire, rehire, like that constant machine that's always going on, especially on the sales and BDC side of car dealers. If you could outsource that to a team, it's like, we know all these CRMs usually better than the CRM companies themselves. To me, that's really, really huge.
I don't want to say better. I want to say better, but we have people I know for a fact that work for me, and we've been doing this for 9 years, that have been involved with these CRMs longer than some of the people that they send out to the dealers to train them at their own company. So, like, that's what I mean. Like, we have a lot of experience with a lot of these CRMs, and we're going to do another podcast on our new tech, but our new tech is coming out. It's going to be an accountability tool that's tamper-proof. Why is tamper-proof important? Just what we're talking about. When you're measuring conversations in and outbound, and you're measuring emails in and outbound and texts in and outbound, and you're actually measuring it outside of the CRM is what we're doing, and we're feeding it to an AI system to tell us what's really happening. And it's going to tell us what's really happening. And we're going to make that tamper-proof, meaning you can't say, oh, let me delete some of this so it looks better or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, so long story short, everyone wants to get that 10% lead to close. Well, there's a lot of reasons why you're not at 10% lead to close,
Yeah.
And it's not just the BDC's inability to get appointments.
Yeah.
And so you want to look at that holistically, not just from a one KPI, which is a 10% lead to close.
Yeah.
And make a judgment on all your employees because of your fixation on one KPI. There should be multiple KPIs you're looking at. Engagement rate. Engagement rate's a big one. I told a dealer yesterday, if we are engaged with a customer, we're going to get an appointment 60% of the time. The problem is we're engaging with some of these third-party leads 20%, 15%, 10%. And it's like, Okay, so 10% of, on 100 leads, 10% of 100 is 10. And if I get 60% appointments is 6. If you close 2 of those, that's a 2% lead to close ratio. But we called all the other ones. We emailed them all. We texted them. We called them.
Yeah.
Why is it? Is it the BDC? The third party lead companies or the ad agencies that are selling Facebook leads and other things like that will tell you, oh, you're just not following up enough. It's like, okay, who are you going to believe? You're going to believe them or someone that follows up for a living like us?
Right. Well, several years back now.
I would love for some of them to take some leads and call them themselves and make some appointments, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah. Well, several years ago when you told me, hey, this is what I'm doing with Strolid, and I started to learn a little bit about what you'd built and your approach. One of the things that still to this day is my favorite thing as a value point for dealers. If I'm a dealer and I bring you in, I am going to know because of the work, the consistent follow-up and work that's being done, but also because of the fact that you guys do have and have had technology behind you, like your system, like facilitates all these things to make it fast and communication of multiple sources, but it also has an insights output. It's what I've always called it's the data exhaust, if you will. It's the stuff that comes off of all of that activity. And for the dealers and everyone tuning in, specifically what I mean is if you're a Strolid dealer, you can see in an insights report, here's where all this stuff's coming from, and it will break down who's really doing well or not. And when you have the ability to answer yes to are you applying a consistent process to every single lead source, right? When you can answer yes to that question, then you can go in and say, well, now we know a little difference about this provider doesn't quite do as well as we want it to, because it's all been applied equally, fairly. And not enough dealers do that on their own. Most of them don't. But when you have the ability to do that, I love, and I've always loved the fact that I can use you guys and I will know who is very best among all of my lead sources. And that can help me make a decision to say, hey, this bottom 3, I'm going to move them out and the budget that I spend on them, and I'm going to take half of that budget and try something new. Because for me, I'm always thinking marketing and sales, but marketing and sales. And that is a massive win for you guys, but mostly the dealers that you're working for, because you could be not only telling them, here's your purest sources for lead, volume, close, quality,
if you look at BDC data properly, it's almost like cheating.
Yeah, that's why
that's why you're getting excited. Yeah,
it's inside baseball.
Yes.
Hire you guys, and now I got all this inside baseball, which is really your own data off of doing it the right way, which is really
doing it the right way.
Right? It's hard for the dealers. I mean, they constantly have pressure.
It's hard
There's
for us.
Something going on, but
it's hard for us. I'm not going to tell you we have some magic pixie dust. We just work hard. We have really good trainers that care, that are passionate. We have managers that have been with me a long, long time. Like, nobody's perfect at any of this stuff. Like, that's the problem, right? When I talk about basic fundamentals, I break it down to this, Sean. We don't hire people and train them to be nice. We hire nice people. That's step 1.
Right. Yeah.
It evolves from there. Now the training comes in and we train them. Then we watch them. Then we sit with them. Then we look at their numbers and we listen to their calls and we get them better. And we do it in a way where the employee knows we're trying to get them better. Everyone sees, opportunities with growth and things like that. We're a bootstrap company, so we're not like, we have lots of room for opportunities and growth and things like that. And people see it and they appreciate our approach. I think employees personally always, no matter if it's at a dealership or at Strolid or working at a bank or a hospital, everybody wants to know what is expected of them. And then they want to be recognized for doing it the way that we ask them to do it.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I know I always make things sound like really simple, but to me, it is simple. Treat people well. Obviously, if you're not cut out for the job, we're going to tell you not cut out for the job. And not to be a jerk. It's just like, we've been working with you and you're just not getting it, you know? We have a process for that where we talk to employees, and then, you know, we talk to them again, and then we write them up, and then we terminate. Like, I hate that
you mentioned it, automotive
stuff like that, but that's the reality of what we do. But it starts with your employees and hiring the right people, and then having a process and a set of expectations that they can follow, and not ask too much of them. You know, I mean, there's a very small percentage of us in the world, and I consider myself to be one of them, that you can load a ton of work on. If you're paying me, I'm going to get it done.
Yeah.
But not everybody's like that.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately. Most guys that run dealerships are like me. And then they hire people and expect all their employees to be like them. It isn't possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not possible. So consistency, following a consistent process and all that will give you the data that you need to understand whether or not those people are actually capable or competent enough to do the job. That you'll understand your marketing. If you listen to what they're telling you, or you listen into the calls, you'll understand that your pricing might be too high, or that your merchandising isn't working. If you look at your website analytics, which we look at with our dealers all the time, because we're bringing up the fact that they're not converting enough leads from their website. So let's look at your website. And we get on calls with ad agencies, and we do all of these different pressure points, as we've been calling it, to try to fine-tune your business, help you fine-tune your business. We're not here to just collect a check and say, we'll handle your calls and leads and get you a ton of appointments. It doesn't work that way. I know there are a lot of BDC companies out there that say, oh, yeah, we're going to load you up with appointments. It's like, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that right out of the gate, unless I do an assessment and I think that they're really performing poorly and I know we can make an immediate impact. Then I would tell them that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. As a marketer, for me, and I'm a broken record on this, that type of stuff, especially of lead harvesting, like MQLs, on that consumer side, it's the easiest thing to do. You can literally go and buy 500 leads today if you want to. And your team or your BDC will waste a whole bunch of time and you'll sell nothing. Or you can put all the things together where you're making smart decisions about who are the providers, what are your best sources, consistency, and you're going to find out, oh, this is how you do it. I wanted to ask you a little bit on show rate. So, by
the way, Sean, just so you know, advertising, buying leads, all of that stuff is essential. I'm not trying to say it's bad.
Yeah,
you need it, but you also need to be able to handle that lead. Actually, the first thing you need is the right inventory and merchandising it right, or the advertising isn't going to work. And then you need the advertising to show off all the merchandising and great reasons why to buy a car from you and all the branding and all that. And then what happens next? The customer connects with you. You need a consistent process to handle that.
Yeah.
And then a lot of those customers come in and you need a consistent process to handle that. And in terms of customer expectations, one of the things we do really well is we set the customer up with the understanding and the idea that when they come in, this is going to be painless experience. It's going to save them time. So if our dealers aren't connected with us and that doesn't happen, that can affect results too.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. On appointment show rate, how important is like the communication at the dealership or handoff with the dealership between BDC sales, all that? How critical is that?
I think that's part of my problem, Sean, is I can't determine what's more important. It's all important. You know what I mean? And it makes, I'm kind of fanatical about it. Like I told you, I get frustrated when I see things that are outside of a process because I understand that that's going to cause missed opportunities.
Yeah.
But handing it off to the dealer, we have dealers that are unbelievable that work with us that when we TO a deal, they're on it. They're calling, confirming appointments, and they appreciate everything that we do. And then we have some that it's like hard to get them to even acknowledge our TO. A TO is like we turn over a customer that needs someone from the dealership to speak to them because we can't get an appointment unless certain questions are answered. That type of communication we do regularly on the, we communicate multiple times throughout the day to our dealers and our management teams at the dealership. We're a manager-centric program, so we focus all of these appointments or hot leads, I guess you could call them, or TOs to the management team. Some have someone like an internet type manager, but most of the time it's going through the GSM or the GM. We're talking a lot about barometer and sales. We do the same thing on service. Josh just found out the other day. Well, it doesn't just find out. We've known this, but now part of our assessment for service is to look at their scheduler, because a lot of the service scheduling tools are basically saying they don't have availability when they do. And the dealers don't even know that's happening. Just things like that we focus on. We have an 8-page assessment onboarding form, 8 pages now. It started with like 3 or 4 pages. Now it's up to 8 of detailed information that we want from the dealer prior to launching, so we know how to answer questions when customers call, so we don't have to bother them.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge, and it works really well. And the service guys love us. Knock on wood. It's like one of our, the service department, they want appointments clearly, but their phones are ringing and they're dealing with customers and they're running around the shop looking for parts and all that other stuff. And I know it sounds simple, but still a majority of people call for service. And you need to be able to pick up.
True. And there's a lot that could be learned just from the phone calls, right? Relative to low service appointment rates. What are people saying on those calls? How many dealerships do you think listen in on? Because the volume of service calls is so high. How many of them do you think go in and actually inspect what's the tone? What's the question? Did we answer like, oh, our bays are full, we can't take anybody? How many dealers do you think really go in and listen to those conversations?
Not many. How I know that is I've been in the BDC world for 27 years. And one of the biggest problems in a sales BDC is they get service customers that call the sales line because no one's picking up on the service department. That's been a fight we've been fighting forever. Josh has figured out a really good system around IVRs, which is like press 1 for this and that we install when we go into a dealership. We could talk, and we probably should have Josh on and talk about all of the stuff we do to onboard a dealer. And what we try to do when we onboard a dealer is not bother them much. We do ask that they get their team on a launch call so we can cover the process with everybody, including salespeople and managers. We do that in the service department with service advisors and service managers. That way they know what we're doing, so they're not confused. But all the technical stuff that we go through, testing their scheduler, testing their CRM, setting up workflows, setting up templates, and making sure that old workflows are cleaned out, and testing it to make sure that all of our systems are connected with their systems. And we do work out of the dealer CRM on the sales side, in case any dealers that are listening to don't realize that we have a platform, but it's kind of mirrors the CRM in a way.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be a completely separate system.
Yeah, and I don't know that all dealers, when they're thinking BDC, that enough of them are thinking about the sales side versus the service side, versus also using BDC for mining your own data, coming up with outbound campaigns for brands that are rebounding and that inventories come back, in some manner that, like you've mentioned, Toyota and Honda, and I'm a Toyota guy, so I see it at my local Toyota store all the time, meaning no inventory. But for brands that's come back with that may be a really big factor as you consider we're starting to pick up with sales, that's working, dialing in service. How many dealers do you guys talk to where you feel like they have a really good grasp of the mechanics and getting the best out of, especially both the variable ops side on sales and service? Like they both get.
Yeah, a lot of dealers are addressing both.
Yeah.
On the service side, right? it's called fixed operations for a reason, because their profit margins are fixed, and really what they're selling is time in service. So they're selling capacity, they're selling how much room they have available and how much time they can make based on that availability and that capacity that they have, if they have any. If you're lucky enough to be with, say, BMW, there's like a 2-week wait to get into service. But when I went to GM school, I learned how to trend. I'm sure they have more technology. I remember when I went to GM school, it was 2006. So like it was like a new computer I had, which I thought was cool. And I understood spreadsheets and stuff like that. But we did trend analysis in our financial class, and I still do that. I use that trend analysis on a lot of different things aside from financial trending, like website traffic. I trend it out every month, and now I know, is my traffic up or down? Call traffic into a service department. Are the calls up or down? And you watch those trends, and that's when you go in and tweak your marketing. If you're trending down, you want to go look and see why. If you're trending up, good thing. That's good. And it's that simple. Like I try to keep things as simple as possible. I had to manage 60 dealerships at Group 1, so I had to figure out a way to pay attention to what was important. And at the core level, your traffic is really important. So how many service departments, to your point, look at inbound calls that they get every month versus, and we have a disposition report. So it'll say, Strolid handled 1,000 calls, 200 of them got transferred to a service advisor, 50 were escalated, we scheduled X amount of appointments, we rescheduled X amount of appointments, we transferred to parts this many, we transferred to service this many, and they get a whole, so like when they, at the end of the month, they can say, okay, these are all the calls that came in, and this is what happened with them. And now you can start getting appointment set rates out of that. But you want to clear away all the stuff that wasn't possible to get. Like we have one dealer, or a bunch of dealers do, but one of our dealers specifically has you don't need a call for an appointment for an express lane, express loop. So, but we get calls and we just tell people, oh yeah, that's an express loop. You don't need to make an appointment. Just come right in. So that goes against us on the appointment set rate, right? Because we're not actually setting an appointment, but we're still taking the call and stuff like that. And so we get so much data and detail that we can look at it and compare it to other dealerships, compare it to the previous month, to the previous year, and start helping the service departments as a barometer as well.
Yeah, I think that's super critical. Do you ever catch things from a pricing perspective, service related, that can be helpful for dealers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question. As a matter of fact, one of my buddies is a fixed director for a large group. And when I started putting this together, by the way, one of the reasons we started doing service BDC is because of the calls that we were getting for service. We knew that our dealers needed help. But he told me, make sure you get the top 20 services that the dealer sells and get pricing on them if you're going to do this right. So we do. That's part of our 8-page onboarding form, is to get top 20 services with pricing. And that's all built into our software. So our agents, when they take a call, they get, if someone asks the price for an oil change or a 15K or a 20K or what, a 30K or whatever, and we have all that information in front of us. So
yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's really, really big. Another thing I was thinking about with service is, dealers are still, dying for great technicians, right? It's not like it was, back when you and I were younger. It was like, man, there's a lot of guys who were, wrenching, and, that was a popular pathway. And now that it isn't as popular and dealerships are dying for really expert trained techs, I'm guessing that comes up as a factor sometimes too. When people are like, man, our, service department, either, appointments are low or whatever. It's like, well, maybe you need to fix your personnel issue in your service department so that you've got enough people.
Again, another barometer, right? Like that we could tell you got enough business, you just don't have enough people. Overall, Sean, dealers running a dealership is not easy. I'm blessed to have lots of experience, to have been around a lot of great dealers, and have a lot of great dealers as customers to constantly try and listen to what they need and to try to figure out solutions to some of their problems. That's kind of what selling is all about. You can't sell something unless you have a solution to a problem. Like a pizza shop solves the problem of hunger. You know what I mean?
I love pizza. Look at me. I'm made of pizza.
Me too. But anyway, I think that's probably a good place to park this deal. Week.
I think that is a good one to park on this episode. A lot of great stuff for the audience. This is kind of one of those topics where, for me, as we're going through this one, Vinny, it was kind of refreshing to be reminded of all these extra. I mean, even just talking about service, you guys are bringing in these other value points that are it's probably stuff that it's so back of hand. You're so used to it that you forget about how valuable it is for a dealer to know, oh my goodness, like you guys are going to help me see that I've got more than enough volume and interest in appointments and I don't have enough people, right? And you guys can see that from a sales perspective and a service perspective. That to me is like, hey, I got somebody helping me make sure that the experience that I'm providing my clients is awesome, but I also have somebody that's telling me when I'm imbalanced a little bit. It's like another layer of assistance to help me operate my dealership in the best way possible. And that is that's huge when you're considering all the different places where you might spend money in your dealership. Well, all those extra value points of bringing in somebody like Strolid, to me, is a no-brainer. Anyway, with that said, hey, we'll park it here. If you like it, you love it, none of the above, we still want to hear from you. It's the Dealer Insights Podcast. It gets better with comments, questions, and feedback and recommendations from the audience, so please send them to us. You can drop them in the comments below on the YouTube clips. You can also send them in by way of email to info@strolid.com. And Strolid, although it sounds like a straw that you drink through and a lid on top of, it's spelled STROLID because it's strong and solid. It's what Strolid is, people. info@strolid.com. Until next time, stay strong and solid, and you'll never miss.